due process. Have you looked around recently? Does this look like a police station? Mr. Porter, we can keep you here for the rest of your life if we want to. Your cooperation in this matter would help us decide if that would be an unnecessary measure. That's a line from SCP-4662, one of the 5 skips we're covering in the Week 21 recap on SCP Cafe. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of SCP Cafe. I'm your host, Blue Soul, and first of all, big thank you to Moderator for the new music. Off the album The World Within, this is Space Vandals. You can get it at moderator.bandcamp.com. This track was bar none the track I've wanted to use since I started this show, and Moderator was gracious enough to give permission to use the track, so huge thanks. Go check out the rest of the album. It's absolutely tremendous. You can find a link to the Bandcamp on scp.cafe. In Patreon news, I have 3 new patrons to thank. Caspian2, which actually won't be the last time I mention them today, Rockney M, and Zendane. We are at less than $90 to go for the next tier, and that tier will basically allow me to live stream my recordings going forward. I did try to do the live stream thing in the past. It didn't work very well. I ended up with a notable amount of lag, so the Q&A thing didn't work. Nothing really worked. It was kind of kludgy. So that's the goal. I actually had a lot of fun doing it, but it would have been a lot more fun if things were in closer to real time. In cafe news, over on the store, O5 keycards still only $4.95 until the end of May, so you've got about a week left to take advantage of that. They have been selling at a pretty decent clip. I got all of the giveaway keycards out to everybody that had managed to get me an address to send it to, so that's 3 out of 4. I'm still waiting on one. The other thing in the cafe universe is the premiere of Making a Monster. Season 1, Episode 1, premiering next Tuesday, May 28th, 5 p.m. Eastern. This was the first of the bonus content that actually went out to patrons a week early, so a couple people have already seen it, given some highly positive feedback on it. I hope it is as interesting to the rest of the world when you get a chance to hear this. The first episode basically just goes into the process of coming up with ideas. I do sort of an exercise where I lay out 8 different things that might motivate you or inspire you to get started with a work. I actually follow my own exercise in the piece and come up with 6 of them, 6 different ideas, and I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to do yet, but the next episode will sort of kick things off as far as writing the skip in earnest. This will be my first main list SCP in 6 years, so I'm excited. I'm a little, I won't say nervous, but like it's a whole different ball game since Series 2, which is the last thing I've written in the main list for. You can't get away with sloppy work. You can't get away with shoddy, subpar stuff. You've got to bring your A game to really shine. My first piece didn't really shine, so I'm excited. I'd like to think that we can put everything that we talk about on the show and in the one-shots into practice and really knock it out of the park with the article. So Making a Monster, listen for it on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Now, between now and then, this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, there will be a seminar held by SCP Wiki admin Bright, that is Dr. Bright to just about everyone, is going to be holding a seminar on writing memorable and interesting characters. Gonna be a really fascinating little workshop, I believe. Bright has, really done a great job in building nuanced characters, not just his own author avatar, but, you go read the stuff that he's actually contributed, because I don't think people give him a lot of credit beyond that very, iconic character. Bright's hell of a writer, and this is going to be very much worth your time. This is held in workshop on Sin IRC. This channel does require registration. I would advise, if you have not ever done the SCP Wiki chat, the chat guide is going to be your best bet as far as getting started. If you've never done IRC before, it's not too terribly difficult to pick up. A couple of little commands. The IRC format is the protocol, I should say, is older than most of you. It's just turned 31, I think. So, it's a little no frills, but you know what? That's just fine. Workshop is where we're going to hold it, and it's going to be really, really fascinating. I think there will be transcripts available if you can't make it for whatever reason. Don't worry, you won't necessarily be able to ask any questions, but we will have transcripts made available as well. Also wanted to draw people's attention to a new podcast, not mine, but a new podcast called Crit Lives Within, which is sort of the phrase that you'll see in a lot of collapsibles for critique in the forums on articles. The show is basically taking a single piece and going into the critique of it. Less what I do, because I'm more about going over the thing from top to bottom and sort of summarizing it so you don't have to read it. This is more of explaining the process behind critique of, we're telling you not to do this, and there's a good reason. This is run by cafe favorite Mucho Mitos, Mini Meats. Did the pilot episode already on SCP-4137. That is available now at critlives.podbean.com. There'll be a link for Crit Lives Within on scp.cafe for the Week 21 show as well. Now, on to Week 21. 14 skips in scope this week. Some really interesting ones. I ended up narrowing this down to 5. I don't have any long boys for you. I don't have any small boys for you. But 5 skips, all really good. We are going to get things started. SCP-4885, titled Find Him by Western. So on this piece, there's nothing resembling a header image. There's no fancy styling. There's no info pane. There's no nothing. We've got the only sort of break in convention is this bold, centered piece of text above the rating module that says no information regarding any specific location on Earth is to exist on SCP-4885's file unless given direct permission by the O5 Council. So before the work sort of starts, we're sort of setting the stakes here already. That's kind of cool. We have an object class of Keter to kind of reinforce that, and then the procedures. These are very long procedures. As a matter of fact, on a 1080p display and without, any real crazy toolbars or anything like that, these procedures fill the page. It's got bullet points. It's got like 6 or 7 paragraphs, which I'm going to summarize for you. The skip is presently only theorized to be contained, and what they mean by that is that it is contained within a containment chamber, but we don't know which one and we don't know where, and that is apparently relevant to maintaining containment. We have a procedure that is very complex should there be a containment breach that involves 36 different chambers, a D-class, a further 216 containment chambers held in standby, a pseudo-random number generator to determine where the D-class goes, and there's GPS and video, and it's highly complex, and there's apparently a non-zero possibility that in the midst of all of this, it could breach again, and we have to do the whole damn thing over. Being aware of the skip's existence is apparently also important with regards to containment or lack thereof. Personnel that are aware of its existence are not allowed within 100 meters of any of the containment chambers mentioned. There's signs and warnings placed around them that lead you to believe they're water treatment rooms, and that if you see a leak, then we will treated as a containment breach. We also have our first dash in here, a -1, and these are -1 instances located via the far2.ai construct, are contained within location I. And the I is lowercase. We'll see whether that's relevant or not. The whereabouts of location I is only known to this AI construct, which is connected to 80% of closed-circuit TV security systems within the US and 40% of the total on Earth. So this is all quite high stakes, isn't it? If our AI construct finds a -1 instance, carrier drones will go attempt to grab the body, and that might be burying the lead a little bit. And at that point, it carries it to location I, using this keeps going, using a specialized AI to take routes that minimize the chance of unwanted civilian interference. That's probably a little bit of a crufty passage it can probably go. And in the event that a civilian notices and the skip breaches containment, the drone will send a big alert, and then we have to do the big old procedure again. And in the event that the location I's whereabouts are actually discovered, the next personnel located within document paint the town yellow, this is in all caps with dashes in between it, will establish a new location I, and their immediate family will be notified of their death. That's the end of the procedures. These procedures are super lengthy. They're the longest procedures I've seen in months. And at this point, we have set the stakes incredibly high. Like, we've got this rising action, all these chambers and random chants. So, as much as it's possible, nobody is aware that the skip exists, and those that do don't know where it is, and it doesn't know where it is. These are all pieces that are apparently highly relevant in keeping the thing contained. And then we go into the first sentence of the description, which reads, SCP-4885 is an anomalous humanoid resembling the main character of the popular series of puzzle books Where's Wally, known in the US as Where's Waldo. You're fucking kidding me. So you have this big falling action, like, oh, for fuck's sake, we're doing a Where's Waldo skip. And then the next sentence reads, this entails that 4885 wears a horizontal red and white striped shirt, a red and white bobble hat, and jeans. However, a noticeable difference in appearance from the character is the entity's paler skin and the lack of eyes. Oh, okay. So a little bit more fucked up version of Waldo. And then our next paragraph says that in the event that a subject knows of 4885's location at any given time, the skip will move to the nearest wall and begin to phase into it. The skip then appears inside of the subject and will reach up the esophagus and grab the subject's chin through their mouth, pulling themselves through the subject, destroying their internal organs and their spine. At this point, a yellow liquid exits the corpse's mouth and will cover the subject entirely, which causes it to become a -1 instance. You see what we're doing here? What we've got is a really beautiful lesson in pace, that we have the rising action, and then you've got this big letdown of, oh fuck, it's just a Waldo thing. And then you've got this terrible body horror of it doing this killing you from within in a really horrific manner, and the rising action goes right back up to the very tip top, is about as high as you can go. It's really, really cool. That was the thing I really wanted to go into with this particular piece. So we have our -1 instances, which are these corpses covered in yellow liquid. The corpses become covered in illustrations. The illustrations look like Where's Waldo books, with many different characters appearing on the instance's skin, and these illustrations are coming straight from the liquid that exits the corpse's mouth. This is a little bit of a kludgy sentence, and we could probably presume that because we just sort of built up to that. That's probably a redundant passage there. And they point out that we have not yet found Waldo on any of these -1 instance, any of these illustrations, and these are permanently embedded into the skin. They can't be removed. They're much like a tattoo in that regard. If a subject knows the location of any -1 instance, the skip will teleport itself to the subject and kill them in the exact same manner as if they discovered the skip itself, and this will also transform them into a -1 instance. So that's kind of an interesting not fully fleshed out yet twist as to you have this, very much a Where's Waldo thing, like, oh, he's there, and then he comes to you. But also the corpses, the illustrations that he leaves behind, has the same effect. We go from here to a discovery log. This is a transcript between 3 members of Mobile Task Force Chi-19, Unrelenting Punishment. They were sent to capture an entirely separate anomaly and did not know of the skip's existence. So we've got these 3 MTF members. They're numbered 1, 2, and 3. One says that they are trying to find an object. It's a pair of black spectacles capable of killing the user and covering their body in strange pictures from an unknown children's book. They go through the house. They go upstairs. 3 says there's a picture on the wall. It looks like chalk. And here we have our image. This is the only image in the piece. It is black. It is, supposed to be a chalkboard here. And it has a picture of Waldo, a fairly simplistic one, with big eyes and a big open, circular oval-shaped mouth. And it says, Waldo found mommy, written next to it. The MTF indicates that they're in the bathroom. They find a strange-looking shower and assume that since the house has been abandoned for several years, the shower probably doesn't work, but they try it, and it does. 3 touches the water and finds that it's scalding hot. 2 finds the object they were looking for. It's a pair of black circular glasses with no lenses to be found. They start examining the thing, and 3 notices an inscription on them, and it says, and then we get into a highly redacted section here. There's 3 different redactions in here that take some of they add mystery, but also they're a little frustrating because they're not quite clear. The subjects and predicates here are not super well defined. But what is interesting is that the inscription and the phrases were definitely not there when the MTF first arrived. So we chalk it up to being mimetic. They're also apparently not in English because 2 has to take out a translator and punch the phrase in, and says, never mind, doesn't appear to be a mimetic. It says, the basement. The corpses from a child's book are in the basement. He is here too. And then it cuts off, and 3 says, okay, take a picture and we'll send it back. It gets cut off as 2's groaning and holding their stomach. 3 asks, are you okay? What happened? And at this point, a set of fingers exits 2's mouth, grabbing their jaw, hands pushing down, launching the jaw across the room, and 4885 exits 2's body. 1 and 3 start opening fire. The entity charges 1, shoves their fingers down 1's throat, and begins clawing into their mouth by unhinging their jaw. 3 freaks out, asking for help. Audio's severed. End log. So we have this transcript. The site goes into lockdown as 4885 at this point kills most of the personnel. The O5 Council has an emergency meeting. They come up with this procedure, and apparently this procedure worked really well. The skip is theorized to be contained, and all information regarding the location of discovery was removed by an algorithm, and the skip's file was created. That looks to almost be the end of it. We have an addendum here, and it says Location I's creation. So this is a collapsible, and it's a note from the lead researcher, and this talks about Location I, that this researcher will not require any D-class or any help from anyone. That Location I, as far as any of you are concerned, will not exist. It will be known to no one except for me and me alone. They'll establish Location I in the algorithm that they've created. They will allow -1 instances to be dropped off at Location I, and any of you that know the skip's effect know where this is going. And once the location's been established and the algorithm's up and running, they'll exile themselves to a location that, as far as any of you are concerned, will not exist. I will cast myself to the forests, and I will wait for 4885 to take me. Roughly 3 days after I exile myself, activate the procedure, and do not go looking for Location I. If you're reading this and you're not an O5, then everything that I just said has already happened, and this proposal is a success. No need to pray for me. Instead, pray that you never find Waldo. End article. So the piece is it begins as, I think, a masterclass in pacing. It to me doesn't quite keep that hot streak going towards the end, because this what we've done here at the end, yes, we get that it's the guy sacrificing himself, but the build up to the punchline also needs a certain amount of pacing, and maybe there's a way to go about this that sort of preserves the pace, because we just had this big this big reveal where they find Waldo. He exits from one MTF member and enters another, and then we lose all contact, and then he goes on a rampage at a Foundation site, and then we have this very thoughtful note that's 5 full paragraphs, and it slows things down a lot before trying to bring them back up at the end. And I don't know, I'm not in love with how this thing ends, but for what it does really well, and the community agrees. This thing's at plus 80. It's not as though it's a bad piece. I just think this is a good piece that is a couple of minor adjustments away from being a really great piece. This is still a plus 1. The concept, I think, was something that drove a lot of the upvotes, because where's Waldo or where's Wally if you're anywhere else but here in the US, is everybody knows that it's ubiquitous, and it's an easy concept to adapt to the SCP format, so that's cool, and I think that drives a lot of it. But I think it is a couple of adjustments away from being a little bit better. In particular, these procedures are quite long. You can lose the whole thing in the beginning, and where I talk about pacing, the pacing would even be better with perhaps condensing these procedures a little bit. The whole, I get you want to set the stakes high, and that these may all even be part of the procedure that's laid out, but perhaps some of this could just be footnoted as, see this non-existent addendum on what the procedure actually is, because some of it is overwrought to the point that you can skip over it, and it doesn't add really anything to the story, I don't think. Some little lines that maybe they're conventional, we're used to seeing them, but when you are spending as much time on containment procedures as this piece does, I think you have some leeway in dropping some of those normally expected sentences just for the sake of brevity. So yeah, some minor issues, but overall a really good piece, and still an easy plus 1. Moving on, SCP-4439, titled The Weeping Child by Caspian 2. This is a patron. This is a first-timer piece. We have a couple of images. There's 2 images. One of what looks like a rusty sort of wall. It's a white wall. It's got orange and black stains on it. And the caption reads, SCP-4439 in dormant state. And below that is a second image. This also looks to be a wall, but it has the same sort of black lines in big vertical striations. They go all the way from the top to bottom of the frame, and the caption here reads, SCP-4439 expanding upwards 3 hours after tenants were evicted from premises. So yeah, we have an object class of Euclid, and minimal procedures here. The building containing the skip is permanently cordoned off from the public. 4 agents are embedded in the town and serve as primary caregivers of SCP-4439. Interesting choice of wording there. And additionally, an agent is to remain in physical proximity of the skip at all times, but otherwise is able to carry out their regular duties. And in the event of a breach, additional personnel are to be deployed and collect all samples of 4439 and quarantine its spread. So we have the images that kind of indicate this is a mold or a stain or something that can grow, and we apparently need to do what we can to prevent it from spreading. So the skip is described as a stain on a wall. located in the second floor bedroom of a house in the outskirts of Black Box, Missouri. And the size of the stain is about 10 centimeters high and 50 centimeters wide, located at the bottom of the easternmost wall of the room. So upstairs in a bedroom, you've got a stain about 8 inches high and about foot and a half across. Okay. The skip is able to expand or shrink itself on its own accord and reacts to the physical presence of humans or lack thereof. In isolation, the skip will spread across all hard surfaces at a rate of about a meter per hour. In the presence of a human adult, however, the skip becomes docile, gradually shrinking, back to its original size and shape. The lab tests that we've conducted on it indicate that the skip is composed of soot and dust, skin cells, and traces of human blood. We go from this to a discovery log that we had law enforcement called to Black Box Avenue December 7th, 2012, after neighbors reported hearing a woman screams at 1:15 in the morning. The owner of the house the owners, a man and a woman, were lucid and calm and had no knowledge of any suspicious activity. The cops searched the house. They found a few drops of blood on one of the bedroom floors. Couldn't find any wounds or signs of duress on the wife. The husband assured them it was nothing but a nosebleed. The cops left, and about a week later, Foundation agents were alerted to increased anomalous activity around the house. A child's cries could be heard repeatedly during the night, even though there was no record of the couple having any offspring. So, upon entry to the house, the skip was discovered to have spread over most of the building's interior, covering the walls, floorboards, and ceilings, and the bedroom on the second floor appeared to be the point of origin. So the rest of this work is set up in addenda. We begin with an interview with the original tenants, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, and our project lead, Dr. Wu, and Brown is, really pissed off at the whole concept that, they've been kicked out of their own house. Dr. Wu asks about the stain. Mr. Brown says, we've tried cleaning it off multiple times. What's that got to do with anything? And the missus asks, is that what this quarantine's for? It's a lot of fuss for a little mold on the wall, no? Is it infectious? And Brown says, you should have scrubbed it. I should say Mr. Brown, since they're both brown, aren't they? You should have scrubbed it with acid like I told you to. And Wu asks, can either of you recall when the stain first appeared? And Mr. Brown says, it was about 2 weeks ago when and Mrs. Brown looks upset, looking down at the table. And Brown sort of changes course, says, when we got home, I have no idea how it got there. Do you? And, to the black box, to the missus, who shakes her head. And Wu says, that was around the time of your first trimester checkup with Dr. Phillips. Is that not correct? Interesting. So the Foundation already knows quite a bit about this, about these people before they've brought them into custody. In any event, the Browns concede the point, and Mrs. Brown is about 3 months along, but indicates that there were some complications. We send them to a temporary housing unit. We send a research task force, an RTF, to initiate D-class testing. So we, along the same time of this, there's an incident log involving a neighbor. These are the neighbors from across the street. They have a son about 10 years old, dribbling a basketball in the direction of this house, this anomalous house. And this is from a roadside camera. There's apparently several cameras embedded in and around the house that we've already sort of placed to keep tabs on things. The boy is dribbling a basketball, pauses near their front porch, and turns to stare at the door. He claims later to have heard the faint cry of a baby coming from within the house. Circles the exterior a few times, peering into windows, and eventually climbing into a window on the first floor that was only half boarded up. The RTF asks to intervene to get this kid the hell out of there, and is denied by the project lead, Dr. Wu. Our second camera picks up at this point, and this is inside the house. The boy climbs in one of the windows and approaches the camera through the hallway, goes up the stairs, reaches the top of the stairs, turns to his right and freezes. And at this point, he is paralyzed. He's totally transfixed and not moving for 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and it's not clear to us whether this paralysis is voluntary, but after that time, he collapses to the ground unconscious. The basketball bounces down the flight of stairs, then off camera. The RTF again requests to intervene. Dr. Wu again denies this, citing experiment integrity, which is interesting because this isn't a damn experiment in the first place, but there you go. At this point, the footage in the camera that was in the bedroom that's supposedly the point of origin for the skip has nothing but white noise and static. And at this point, Dr. Wu's order to stand down is countermanded by the RTF commander, who orders immediate extraction of the boy. The RTF go in, grab the boy, get the hell out. And this is the end of our footage. Dr. Wu remarks at this point that we have an unofficial test log when Jimmy Blackbox of, 10 years old happened to wander into the building. The test subject claims to have heard a baby's cry that intensified as he ventured deeper into the house. Upon reaching the second floor, he saw a black mass squirming in the bedroom, followed by a sharp throbbing pain in his head. The subject remained unconscious for 22 minutes, 30 seconds, and the working theory is that the skip has an amplified effect on children in close proximity. Commander Weir's take on this is that the RTFs reported no injuries and recommend immediate reinforcement of the site's exterior to prevent a future breach, and a formal complaint is to be logged against Dr. Wu for delayed endangerment of a member of the public. So we go from this to another experiment log. This one involves our D class that we sent out to actually go in the first place before this boy came in and kind of gave us an impromptu test. Our D class is sent in, can't see shit, has to use their flashlight, finds black mold on the walls. The D class goes down the hallway to the bedroom. There's a broken cot, peeling wallpaper. The wallpaper used to be unicorns and rainbows. Apparently on further inspection, all of the walls look infected. There's black stuff everywhere, and notices that the mold is shifting, and they use the phrase eyeballing me wherever I go. They lean in to examine the easternmost wall of the room. The commander says, be careful, don't get too close. The D-class says, smells bad too, metallic, like blood. Dr. Wu at this point says, reach out and touch it, if you would, please. The commander off mic says, are you crazy? And the D-class scrapes off a bit of the black stain with a finger and says it's wet, like it's streaming down the walls, and then recoils, and we have static, except for the D-class's heavy breathing. On the camera feed, a lone circle of light flashes rapidly across all four walls of the bedroom, and D-class says it's moving, that black shit's moving everywhere. What the hell's happening? Dr. Wu says, a very interesting reaction to human touch. Commander says, get out of there, and, D9455, that's an order. Dr. Wu says, no, right where you are. Are you able to tell us which direction the black stain is moving in? The D-class says, fuck if I care. I'm guessing this ain't normal fucking mold on the wall, is it? And our commander says, Dr. Wu, I highly, this is italicized, highly recommend we extract her asset. She's going to. Dr. Wu says, listen carefully. D9455, I want you to remain in the center of the room and stay completely still. Can you do that? And the D-class says, fuck this. I'm not staying in this house another minute. Dr. Wu says, D9455, look at your finger. Do it now. And they hold their finger up to the camera. A small patch of black mold can be seen on their fingertip. It does not appear to be moving. And the D-class is visibly shaking. And Wu says, you see, everything's fine. D-class says, everything's not fine, Doc. Get me the fuck out of here. There's arguing off mic. And finally, the commander says, D9455, you're to remain in the testing area as long as instructed, as discussed by your terms of employment, and under the sole discretion of project lead Dr. Wu. And D-class says, what? For how fucking long? Dr. Wu pauses and says, another 24 hours, if you would be so kind. That's fucking rough. We have Dr. Wu's remarks at the end of this addendum. Remainder of footage tracks SCP-4439 shrinking into a corner of the room whilst in the physical presence of a D-class. Further reports of a baby's cries were uncorroborated through electronic observation. No other effects is observed on the D-class for the next 24 hours. Motion to dismiss official protest by Commander Weir, who claims that the D-class was placed at unnecessary risk throughout the experiment. So we go to our fourth and final addendum. This is a second interview between Wu and Mr. and Mrs. Brown. And the Browns ask if they can return home. Wu says, "I'm sorry to say a young boy has already been injured on your premises, with a team of professionals having to risk their lives in order to save him. In order to prevent future incidents from occurring, we're placing your residence under permanent quarantine effective immediately." And they, don't get it. And Wu says, "I'm afraid your house is no longer safe, and I think you both already know the reason why." Wu says, "We have indication that something happened in the second floor bedroom the night before the stain appeared. Mrs. Brown, may we ask when your next appointment with Dr. Phillips is scheduled to take place?" And the missus says, "What do you mean? I believe it's in another 3 months." And Wu says, "Curious, when we called her office earlier today, her staff told us you'd canceled all of your future appointments." And we're kind of getting into the exposition and kind of turning the story over, and this is Mr. and Mrs. are arguing, and Mrs. Brown turns to Wu and says, "Please, you have to understand, it was Dr. Phillips. She said our baby wouldn't survive past the 3-month mark. We didn't want any of this to happen." Wu says, "While I'm genuinely sorry for your loss, Mrs. Brown, at this point, the best course of action is for you to vacate the premises and let us make the necessary arrangements." Mrs. Brown says, "No. At least tell me my baby, my sweet angel. He's okay? He's really alive? Can I see him one last time?" And the trouble we have here is that should be our really pivotal line. That's not really where we end it. We have, Mr. Brown says, "What the hell are you talking about?" to the missus, who says, "I'm afraid contact with your son would be inadvisable, Mrs. Brown. I suggest we put the past behind us and move on." Mr. Brown says, "You're both crazy if you think I'm leaving the house for a few shit stains on the wall." End log, and Dr. Wu's remarks end the article, and they read, "Because of high risk of containment breach, Class C amnestics administered to both Mr. and Mrs. Brown before their permanent relocation to redacted. Note, Mrs. Brown reported to be expecting a second child. Recommend close monitoring and intervention in case of further anomalous activity." So we have a pretty solidly laid out concept here. The logs do a good job of painting a really freaky picture, but there are some hugely missed opportunities with this piece. This article did a better job than most of the ones I can think of in recent memory in painting a pretty bad picture of a Foundation doctor. Dr. Wu in this piece is a real piece of shit for the most part, and we don't really do anything with it. There should be some resolution one way or another when it comes to Wu, when you build them up as, not a very good person. You want to see some level of either comeuppance or some resolution in either direction, but that's not what happens. We don't find out what happens with disciplinary. There's an opportunity there because we already talk about, formal protests of, behavior and conduct and all that sort of thing. There's an opportunity there that was missed, and I think that hurts the piece because we did a really good job of characterizing Wu better than anybody else in this work. Additionally, the first and fourth addenda, the two interviews, could probably be condensed into one for the sake of brevity here, because the fourth sort of builds upon what we did in the first, but takes a while to get there. And I think you could get this all into one interview and not have really lost anything and shorten the work considerably. So again, we've got good skips that are almost great skips. Like I said, I'd love to see Wu get built up. Either build them up more and let the reader focus all of their anger on this doctor. Particularly, what you could do is almost there should be an opportunity here to send the Browns back in and maybe do that. Like, make this interview make your second and third addenda the first and second. Take the stuff that you sort of laid out in the first and wrap that into what's the fourth right now. That'll be your third. Your fourth addenda, send them into the house with Wu supervising over the radio, and let's see this interaction between Mr. and Mrs. Brown and the skip. That would be probably a worthy payoff for everybody involved. That would be a quality climax. I think that would be something to really make this piece shine. But it's doing well for a first time piece. This is at plus 20. That's an awesome effort, and I think this suffers from not a ton of eyes on it, so I expect this to be over that plus 30 mark pretty soon. This was an easy plus 1 for me for a first timer piece. I'm really impressed, but yeah, on giving it a little further consideration, I think sending the Brown family back in and having them interact with this directly would be a huge focal point of the work from a narrative perspective. In our Patreon plugs, Matt W. would like to plug SCP-1730, saying, SCP-1730 is a boatload of fun and one of the first really long skips I made myself sit down and read. It turns from a creepy exploration log into a full-on action movie and is very well written. I recommend it if you have 20 minutes to spare. SCP-1730 will be linked on scp.cafe. Moving on, SCP-4064, titled It's Not You, It's Us, by Henzoid. There is an image of a woman. She has long, dark hair. She is bare at the shoulders and chest. That is not the most striking thing in this image. The most striking thing in this image is that her face is covered in gold flake or some other form of gold glitter. And I'm talking lips, eyes, all of it. And the caption reads, 4064-B, pictured when it was first brought into Foundation custody. We have an object class of Keter, which you've got this, woman, and we don't know much yet, but it's an interesting stage that's sort of being set for us. We have in the procedures that the Foundation has 2 instances of 4064 in custody at Site 96. They're kept in separate high-security containment cells with non-electronic locking mechanisms. I wonder if that's important. No personnel are allowed access to either room without direct permission from the O5 Council. That's a bit severe, and you hope that the payoff is worth it in explaining why the O5s would have to get involved directly, because that's a pretty significant standout from what we would normally do. Additionally, we can only speak with them through mechanical vocal relay systems. Visual monitoring is possible through prismatic shafts. We're going to a lot of trouble not to observe or interact with these entities directly. The whereabouts of the remainder of 4064 is unknown. The knowledge is of vital importance, not just for the sake of full containment, but also so the skip does not gather more intelligence on the Foundation and other GOIs than it already has. And we have a footnote here that says the daughters of Anatolia are thought to know of and possibly be allied with the Serpent's Hand, but this is yet to be confirmed. If we find another instance of this skip or its current target, which is an interesting little lead there, any monitoring is to be halted, and we enact Operation Wool Coat, which is where squadrons of armed personnel are sent to the most recent sighting of any instance and the current residence of its target. All personnel involved must be bearer of any electronic devices or metals that could carry a ferromagnetic charge. So magnetism, electronics, apparently relevant to the skip as well. So the procedures also have an update that says as of July 13th, 2015, -A has been relocated to a new site and granted greater freedoms, such as standard non-hostile humanoid cells and increased personnel interaction. It's requested to have its designation removed and prefers to be called Jane, but this request has been denied, and -B should not, under any circumstances, be made aware of these changes. A little jealousy, maybe. So the skip is described as a hive mind capable of inhabiting 6 distinct bodies, and iterations of the skip appear as light-skinned females with face masks. We have a footnote here saying the masks themselves weigh 11 kilograms and are made of solid gold. Individual hosts of the skip are not anomalous by themselves. They share the unique ability to interact with the masks on a biological level. These masks allow instances of SCP-4064 to share neuron impulses, so the masks are sort of the gateway to the hive mind, and once their masks are on, they will perceive their surroundings, and they will be aware of everything all at the same time, from the hive mind doing what it is. The skip's goal after self-preservation is to serve a deity referred to as Anatolia, and we have a footnote that says see Addendum 3. There's another aspect of the masks that, while anomalous, is not restricted to use by the hosts. The masks affect the voice of those wearing them, adding emphasis and vigor to their speech, and persuasion by the wearer of the mask of those in direct auditory range becomes exceedingly difficult to resist. So something along the lines of a siren song. And we go into addenda from here. This kicks off with a site doctor basically confessing that he had been keeping knowledge of an anomaly secret for a number of weeks. We were initially going to reprimand the guy, but we, upon figuring out the properties of the skip, lifted this reprimand from their record. It's set up as a phone call transcript, and it's all one way. It's them basically, imagine like leaving a big ass voicemail, and this lays out their interaction with what is now 4064. Describes him as an anomalous Keter class entity, currently uncontained. Describes him as a hive mind of 6 females, armed and dangerous. Well, not armed, but dangerous. Really beautiful and getting off track. Gives a little discovery log of September 5th, 2013. So we do the math here. That's about, about 5 months, 5.5, almost 6. They were at a bar, and she had the gold mask on, but for some reason it didn't seem weird. It was just like an accessory, and they start talking, and everything that she said, he wanted to hear more, so she invited him to talk outside. They went to the alley and just, kept talking, and immediately he falls in love with her. And then she brings in her sisters and said they were on the run from a war-infested country, maybe, and they needed a place to stay. So he responds, yes, anything for you, and lived with each other for 5 months at this point, and realized the anomalous nature of her and their sisters, that, it's a hive mind, but she'd made me promise not to tell anyone about her for safety reasons, and I was so compelled to do so, but, knew I had to report her because she's an SCP, or she's going to be, but I couldn't say no to her. So, it goes on to say, I'm pretty sure it's memetic, like mind control, they make you fall in love with them, and I couldn't say anything. I'm not 100% sure what counts as memetic, but I feel like this is it, so it's not my fault. Okay, see you on Monday. So this is actually a really interesting format. I like this whole, one way, left a message explaining everything in, a more colloquial language. This is a nice change of pace. I wouldn't want to see it all the time, but every once in a while, this is a really nice addition to things. So MTF Pi 1 gets involved. City Slickers. They stake out the area. They successfully capture 2 of the 6 instances. These are our Dash A and Dash B. We begin interviewing Dash A, who is Dr. Rosen really wanted to get involved with this, but due to his prior experience, his request was denied. So the site director gets involved instead. Dash A is frantic, saying, let me go. I need to see my sisters. They're looking for me. I need to refocus. This is too much for me. I need to refocus. Give me my mask. I need it to refocus. And that is the centerpiece of this interview. B, on the other hand, will not talk. And Dr. Knight at this point says, look, we have a containment cell ready for you and your sister. We're not going to let you go anytime soon. So, and gets cut off. Says, did you say my sister? I'm not the only one. How many more have you taken? And apparently we let some big cat out of the bag there. B gets frantic, says, let me see my sister. I need to talk to her. Let me see my sister. Kicks Dr. Knight in the head. Knocks her the fuck out. 2 guards restrain Dash B and take her to her containment cell. So our interviews really didn't go all that well, did they? We have our... we tried more interviews, but no luck. We basically halted them. 4 months pass, and Dash A requests of their own volition an interview with our site director. Dash A basically proposes that in exchange for her compliance, she wants to be treated like an actual person, real food, human interaction, and says, "I'm not a monster, not anymore." So Dr. Knight takes her up on the offer and asks her to explain what she can about the daughters of Anatolia. We're going to cut to the chase here, and she starts indicating what she knows about it, that it began only a few years ago. She doesn't know much about the daughters, just that she's one of them. She's actually the youngest. The sisters, which is in with a capital S, are the youngest to date. Moth, Anatolia created us to be her, I'm not sure how to put it, breadwinners? We feed her, though not the way most people are fed. Anatolia feeds on emotions. I'm not sure exactly how she gets these emotions, though I suspect it has something to do with the gold masks. Me and my sisters, we collect anguish. Our role is admittedly embarrassing, but we will force others to fall in love with us and then break their hearts, and through that, Anatolia is nourished. There are two other groups, the matrons that are the next oldest. There are 5. They collect fear for Anatolia. Their methods are morally questionable, though in my short time I've been realizing none of us are particularly right in what we do. The matrons collect fear by kidnapping and torturing their victims. They do not kill them, however. That is the job of the pipers. They are the oldest of the daughters. There are only 3, and I've never seen them. They kill. They murder innocent people, good people, all to collect mourning. Anatolia feeds on strong negative emotions, and the strongest of all is pure mourning. That's all the information she can give, and that's quite a lot to get started with. A indicates that without her mask she can't focus, and if she can't focus, she can't know where her sisters are. However, these last few months, she may have been trapped in that forsaken room, but now actually feels like a person. I have my own thoughts and feelings. It's not something I got to have when I was focused. And then requests not to share any of this information with B, with her sister, in the other room, and the thought that at least she had someone in the next room experiencing her pain with her would actually be comforting to her. And we go from this to a 4th addendum that is 2 sentences. Nearly 5 years after its initial containment, on April 23, 2019, SCP-4064-B was observed to have a notable physical change, that being the appearance of a single gray strand amidst its usually black hair. No alterations have been made to containment procedures since this discovery. End article. So this piece does a lot of things. We set up a potential GOI here, which I am intrigued by. We've done a good job of laying out this hierarchy for a goddess, or at least something that people believe to be a goddess that feeds on negative emotions and has powerful, anomalous factions able to do their bidding. And we've only managed to capture 2 of the 6 of the weakest of the bunch. Altogether, that's a really compelling combination. The fact that it took 5 years to get a single gray hair on one of Anatolia's soldiers, as it were, indicates that they may be pretty goddamn strong. So from a structural piece for, like, if this is supposed to build up potentially a new GOI, I think this succeeds in doing so. Everything about this piece is really well done. The dialogue is good. The piece isn't really any longer than it needs to be. We've got potentially where you can be sympathetic with Dash A, that perhaps they were recruited into this against their will, and now that they've had some time away from the mask, they're starting to feel like themselves again. There's a lot of nuance to this article, and in that regard, I'm very surprised to find this to be, I think, very underrated. This is currently only at plus 15, with only 2 comments on it. So I think this suffers from not a lot of eyes at all, but I really liked this piece, and this was very easy plus 1. I have nothing I really want to see changed in this piece. Good job. Moving on, SCP-4288 titled Your Dirty Little Secret by Stormbreath. There is no image in this piece anywhere to be found. As a matter of fact, this piece is rather short. We have an object class of Euclid, and the procedures indicate that the skip is inherently self-containing. The effects are also not noticeably anomalous to the public, so information on the skip has been naturally obscured by individuals with knowledge of it. The Department of Miscommunications is in charge of direct management of the skip if required. One individual from the DOMC is to have specific knowledge of 4288 at all times. So, a little bit different. The skip is self-containing, and the thing is basically taking care of itself. That's it's good news for us. The skip is described as an event or series of events that occurred in Callum Township, South Carolina, and describes it as a novel anti-meme that resists attempts at communication, meaning individuals with knowledge of the specifics of the event refuse to communicate such information in any capacity. The complete lack of subjects who will share detailed information on the event, often directly contrasting with their typical behavior, has led to this aversion being deemed anomalous. The issue we keep running into is that as we do research on it, we basically can't talk about it. So we've almost given up on the matter. So we've gleaned a little bit of knowledge due to a little bit of getting little pieces, little details concerning the skip. So we've determined the following set of bullet points, which may honestly contain speculation or hypotheticals. Proper information can't be included in the file, so this is good enough for our purposes. What we have found is that apart from the anti-meme properties of the event, there's no indication of anomalous behavior or phenomenon. The skip is believed to be purely mundane in and of itself. The event would commonly be viewed as shameful or illegal, and this is usually the reason cited for refusing to spread information about it. The event is no longer occurring in any capacity. The reason why it's no longer occurring is too closely linked to the event to describe it. It began after 1980 and ended before 1990. That's as much as we've got as far as a timeline as a 10-year window. The event was associated with a specific set of buildings, somewhere between 1 and 5, and the exact buildings are not disclosed. Upwards of 50 individuals were involved in the event. Not all of these individuals were residents of Callum Township. At least one of them is still alive, although identities have not been confirmed. The anomalous qualities of the event may be linked to their life and expire upon their death. One or more of these individuals was a prominent member of the Callum Township community between 1980 and 1990. The event directly caused harm and indirectly caused harm. The specifics of both are undefined. The ramifications of the event on the Callum Township community are still impactful and have not ended. The anomalous effect of the event was not intentional, but appropriate. The nature of this appropriateness is unexplained. End article. Can you believe that? So there's a lot to unpack in this, and I think the part of the appeal to this is that it is rather intentionally vague. There's a couple of things. The first is that, there is some taboo thing that happened that was so heinous or so terrible that perhaps it's not anomalous at all. Perhaps as people learn about it, they decide they should never have known, but the least they can do is that nobody else should know the specifics of it. And that, I think, is intriguing in and of itself, that, this might not be anomalous at all. That's a really intriguing way that you could take the reading of the work. There's also that we leave so much of this up to the reader. This, is a little town in, middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and small towns do this sort of thing. I would say just about every small town has some little secret or some person that has some very taboo thing about them. And the note that The anomalous qualities of the event may be linked to one of these individuals' lives and expire upon their death. That's straight out of some of the shit I dealt with living in rural Kentucky, where, you would never spill the beans about this person while they're still alive, but when they go, boy, it's going to be all people talk about for a while, because, I was on the outskirts of a town population 800. Everybody in the city, their family, their parents, their siblings, their children, their secrets. And that is very much in the vein of that small town protecting itself. So that's a really intriguing possibility here. This is just, maybe it's not anomalous. Maybe it's just the nature of small town America to, protect their secrets and not ever let them out. That said, we've done a good job in laying out enough where you can come to your own conclusions. We know somewhere in the 80s, somebody did something in one of a few buildings, somewhere between 1 and 5 buildings. I think somebody pooped in a urinal. Big old urinal pooper. Still alive. Can't talk about it. We all know who it is. +1. Before we get into our last piece, this strongly caffeinated podcast brought to you by Stumptown Coffee Roasters. Stumptown Cold Brew, plum tuckered, need a little pick-me-up? Sip on the best brewed coffee beverage known to mankind. Stumptown Original Cold Brew. Good luck, stumptowncoffee.com. They didn't pay me for that. I just really want a coffee sponsor. I swear to God, I'm drinking us out of house and home. In any event, last but not least, SCP-4662, titled Billy's Already Home, written by Gishface. We have an image of a little boy in a grassy field, wearing a zip-up sweater and blue jeans. The caption indicates he's about 5 years old and his name's William Porter, and he is an exact genetic match for every instance of SCP-4662. We have an object class of Euclid and procedures that indicate that all living instances of 4662 except for -11 are to be kept in long-term cryostorage until the Ethics Committee has reached a consensus on reasonable containment. -11 is to be contained as detailed in Addendum -11. Arthur and Maureen Porter are to be contained in standard humanoid containment cells in Site-77, and any 4662 manifestations are to be reported immediately and contained. So the skip is described as an anomalous phenomenon affecting Arthur and Maureen Porter, a married couple formerly located in Dearborn, Michigan. During occurrences of this phenomenon, a copy of the Porter's son William, herein referred to as an instance of 4662, will randomly manifest at a point within 6 kilometers of either Arthur or Maureen. Each instance of them is approximately 5 years old, is genetically identical to William Porter, and possesses a memory of its supposed past life. Interesting. Interviews with the Porters confirm that these memories are consistent with that of the real William Porter, and upon manifestation, the instance report an intense desire to return home and an instinctive knowledge of the location of their parents. Both of these attributes fade within about 10 hours. Now, the thing with this phenomenon is there's a secondary effect whereby each manifestation of an instance coincides with the disappearance of a single child within the 6-kilometer area of effect, effectively replacing them with an instance. These children are uniformly aged between 4 and 7 years. There is no other obvious selection criteria, and if no such children exist when these instance manifests, an instance will appear at a completely random location. Due to ethics considerations, this property has not been fully tested. I like that. We go to an addendum. This is the containment history that talks about the first recorded manifestation in 2003 in Dearborn. An instance of the skip was captured attempting to flee the house of the Shaw family shortly after the disappearance of their 4-year-old daughter. The Foundation gets involved and interviews Arthur, Maureen, and the then 12-year-old William Porter. When interviewed, all 3 of them were consistent in their confusion about the phenomenon. The instance, the 5-year-old, displays no other anomalous properties. It was decided to continue its containment, but to anesthetize and release the porters, albeit with tracking to monitor for any more anomalous phenomena. The next one didn't happen for another 4 years. An instance was apprehended in another Dearborn family's house following the disappearance of their child. As before, all 3 of the porters and the instance were taken into Foundation custody. And interestingly, all of the testimony from Arthur and Maureen was repeated almost verbatim from their previous statement 3.5 years ago. We investigate the porter's place of residence and found a number of human remains interred in their backyard. 6 corpses, each one approximately 5 years of age, each one a genetic match for William Porter. Each one was very clearly murdered, and each one had an estimated time of death corresponding to the disappearance date of a local child. 2 of them had been killed between 03 and 07. The oldest was killed in 1996, making it the only one consistent with the actual birth date of William Porter. This corpse was also unique in manner of death. All of the others were killed with relatively efficient wounds to the neck, a stab wound to the carotid artery. The oldest corpse was killed due to a series of haphazard blunt force trauma wounds. We go to an interview log between the porters and our doctor. We ask them to, if they care to explain really anything, and the Mr. Porter says, "We've been over this already. We have absolutely no idea who that kid you found is or why he looks like Billy. How much longer are you going to keep asking us the same question?" And the doctor says, "Would you mind taking a look at these photos? We took them yesterday in your backyard." Maureen says, "Shit." And Arthur says, "Don't say a word, Maureen. Not another damn word." There's a 15 seconds of silence. Everybody examines the photos. Their examination is cursory and largely emotionless. The doctor says, "Given this new evidence, would you care to revise your previous statement?" Arthur says, "No. I know how this works. I want a lawyer. We have rights, due process and all. I know my rights." The doctor says, "Due process? Have you looked around recently? Does this look like a police station? We can keep you here for the rest of your life if we want to. Your cooperation in this matter would help us decide if that would be an unnecessary measure." Let's start with the most basic question. Are you responsible for the existence of these clones of your son? Did you turn the children in your neighborhood into copies of Billy? And Maureen says, "No, of course not. We never asked for..." And Arthur cuts her off and says, "Damn it, Maureen, shut up." It's weird that we had these 2 articles that had a bickering couple, dead kids, like really strange phenomenon that, these things kind of come in crops. In any event, we'll keep going here. Our doctor says we weren't operating under the assumption that an auto mechanic and a part-time waitress were running an underground cloning facility. All the same, can you think of any unusual events that preceded the first appearance of these copies? And Arthur says, "You're asking if we pissed off a gypsy woman or disturbed an Indian burial ground? Yeah, no such luck, lady." The doctor says, "So they just started appearing suddenly then. And why did you feel it necessary to kill them?" There's no answer. 30 seconds pass. Our doctor says, "Let me say what we believe the timeline to be. Your son, William Porter, was born January 3rd, 1991. The birth certificate on file appears to be genuine. 5 years later, due to some combination of accidental blunt force trauma and willful negligence, you allowed your son to die. Shortly thereafter, probably within the next 24 hours, as nobody appeared to notice his disappearance, the first copy of your son showed up, the one who you've been raising in his place for the past decade. You must have thought it was a miracle, the chance to start over again, until the next copy showed up. There was no plausible way to explain this without opening yourselves up for the discovery of what happened to your actual son, so you and gets cut off." And Arthur says, "Jesus, if you're so sure of yourself, why do you need us? What do you even want from us?" The doctor says, "Honestly, at this point everything's pretty open and shut, with the exception of one question. Why? Billy, shows signs of repeated physical and emotional abuse, and all interviews we've had with him point to his home life being one completely devoid of any form of affection. Forget loving him, you don't even seem to particularly like the boy. So again, why?" Maureen says, "You can make us forget things, right?" The doctor says, "What?" Like that one Tommy Lee Jones movie, you can flash one of those lights into our eyes and we'll forget. Only I keep thinking about the Shaw kid who went missing a couple years ago. I remember thinking at the time, it seemed like our Billy was involved, and, well, he was, wasn't he? See, we're not as dumb as you think we are." The doctor says, "I don't understand what you're getting at." Maureen says, "Could you just make us forget all about this, all of it, the whole thing? Doctor says, 11 years worth of memories? Marine says, yeah. Arthur says, she's right. That'd be for the best. Marine says, nothing in there worth keeping anyway. The doctor says, this interview is concluded. Following this interview, the instances already in containment were reclassified as -5 through -8. William Porter was reclassified as -1 and contained. Arthur and Marine were placed in indefinite containment. No amnestic use was authorized. We probably should have ended the piece there because that would have been a real punch to the gut to leave it at. But we don't. We have one more addendum here of long-term experiment results. And this actually was worth leaving in. We had 2 more instances of the skip materializing, and we had serious ethical considerations because we've got long-term consequences. We have a sort of a custodial foundation to these kids. We've not been able to resolve the issue. A junior researcher submitted a proposal, and this was accepted as an attempt to neutralize the phenomenon. So what we did, the next instance to manifest was immediately contained, sequestered, and raised under the cover story that Arthur and Marine had died in an accident. The instance was allowed to believe it was actually William Porter. We let this version of Billy believe they had contracted a contagious disease that required quarantine in order to justify its continued containment. In all other aspects, the instance was raised according to widely accepted child-rearing psychology under the direct supervision of this junior researcher who also supervised the schoolwork and recreational activities. These techniques resulted in a marked improvement in psychological testing compared to our baseline of our other instances. After this test was implemented, no further instances have manifested to date. A proposal to reclassify 4662 as neutralized is currently pending. End article. I really like this piece. The Porters are portrayed well here. It is strange how these things do come in waves, but we have this inexplicable phenomenon. We stumble upon the way to neutralize it. I think I would have really liked to stick this little last bit of no amnestic use authorized in at the very end, even as just a little one-liner last addendum, what do we want to call it? Determination of, disposition of the Porter family. No amnestic use is authorized and they're to remain under containment. That would be that would add some real emotional, a real punch to it that you don't lose because I think, you have that real sense of justice in that, no, we're not going to let you forget this. You caused this. And to go from that back into a little bit of work as far as, the long-term care and rearing of one of these instances to neutralize the phenomenon. I get why we did that. I think it's a good, happy ending. But I don't know. And don't get me wrong, this is a really good piece, but personally, I think, you're weighing which one is giving you the bigger payoff. Is it the happy ending or is it the sense of justice? And I think if you switch the order of these around, give the happy ending. So it's like, oh, that's nice. And then you've got the no amnestic use is authorized. Like, hell yeah. A real quiet, solemn sort of ending to it that justice has been served in multiple ways. This is personal preference. I think the skip is outstanding. The community agrees. This is at plus 75. So really well done piece. Really enjoyed it. Those are my minor nitpicks on it. Aside from that, that's all I can really pick at. The work is really, really good, and this was a very easy +1 from me. Now, before we get on out of here, I have the weekly mailbag. I have a few questions this week. AIS Mallard asks, what do you think is the biggest obstacle or challenge to completing Project Foundation? And for the unaware, Project Foundation is the name we've given to the collective effort to launch our own wiki platform. So that entails forming a corporation or a nonprofit and launching our own software and being entirely self-sufficient. There's no Wikidot, there's no nothing. It's just us as a standalone entity. I don't think the issues with PF I don't think the biggest hurdles are going to be technical in nature. I think they're going to be bureaucratic in nature. The big considerations of we have to form a corporation or a nonprofit, and a nonprofit is its own bag. I almost said a bag of worms. It's a real bag of worms, is what it is. That people are going to have to be, legal custodians are going to have to be on a board. There's a lot of considerations in that vein that, for the most part, the staff is pretty young. There's a few people at the top. The admins are a little older, but it's a lot to consider. It's really serious stuff. The technical part of it, I'm honestly, once we get going on it, I'm not as concerned about it. We have so many talented people both on staff and really, concerned, just users, just, members of the fandom that are brilliant coders and designers and all the things that we need to launch a platform. Really less worried about that than all of the business side, which is, it's messy. That's what's going to have the most inertia to overcome, is the business side of things. Andrew M. asks, what GOI would you like to see more content for? Right now, I'm feeling Pentagram. I love the concept. It's different enough from UIU that I'd really love to see more of it. The government getting into the occult, and there's already sort of all sorts of conspiracy theory shit along those lines. That the government ran mind control, this, that, and the other. Well, hell, let them get in contact with Satan and Baal and all the other bad guys that I killed in Diablo 3. And let's have those guys work for the government. I and it's probably partly because I have done government work as a day job, but I really like when we bring in government entities and make them deal with the paranormal, with the sort of things that the Foundation concerns themselves with, particularly when they intersect with the Foundation or with other GOIs. So I like Pentagram, and of course, always a big fan of the Shark Punching Center. Lastly, Matt W. asks, do you ever catch yourself having expectations going into a piece because you know who wrote it? Absolutely. This is, let's call it the curse of greatness. If I know in advance that, somebody I really respect has written the piece, they are going to have, the bars raised. And, there's a handful of authors like that I have really, really high expectations that, is that fair to them? Absolutely not. But I've seen what they're capable of. And when you have, Cactus is the one I keep thinking of as I'm talking about this, that, I have him on such a pedestal that sometimes his work would be something that anybody else is going to throw out there and be, plus 50, plus 60, plus 70 sort of piece. He's done so consistently well that I know even he is not always thrilled with the reception if it's at plus 50. So additionally, there are other writers that I know, like Roger and I have a bit of a shared background as far as where we've been in Florida. I've seen certain things get brought up that, I can see little pieces, parts get included in a skip, and without knowing who it is in advance, I can sometimes pick up just based on some of the trappings that they've left in on where things were picked up or where an anomaly was found. Sometimes that's just, it's fun. You like to make things close to home just to give it the sense of self and the sense of attachment to actually write about the thing effectively. And that's not something to overlook. But yeah, it's I am a tougher critic on people that I know can take it because they've shown in the past what a good writer they really are. So out of this, this newer crop of writers with Clem and 9volt and Werillium, I am holding them to a higher standard than the average writer. and it's because I'm impressed by them, and I know they can, just absolutely knock it out of the park and make, some of the best works that the wiki's ever seen. So that's it. We're out of here for week 21. So week 22, this is going to be an odd sort of week. I warned people about this all the way back in like week 17 that this was going to be a funny week coming up. I will not be recording the show on Friday. I'm going to be busy on Friday. I'm going to go to a WWE show. I'm going to be front and center. I have the best seats in the house, literally as good as it's going to get. Right at the ring steps where all the wrestlers go up and get in the ring. Me and my wife, right there. I'm so excited about this. This is like something I've wanted to do since I was like 11 years old. So it's going to be an awesome night, and it's going to be a really crazy weekend. There's a ton going on. Champions League final is next weekend, so enjoy that. There's so much going on. So what I'm going to do is week 22 will be a short week. Week 22 will be scoped from Thursday to Tuesday. I will do my pregame stuff on Wednesday and release week 22 on Thursday, May the 30th. That's the plan, and then we'll go to a slightly longer week for week 23. I will release the show on Friday the 31st because I want to give Making a Monster a little bit of time to breathe and for people to get it without having anything else come up. So that's my plan. Please enjoy Making a Monster. That's going to be out here in just a few days. It was a deeply personal thing to talk about in a lot of ways. So I think there's going to be something in there useful for just about everybody, and I really hope you enjoy it. And we're out of here. If you thought the show was worth a buck, I do have the Patreon running. Every $1 is just a little bit more motivation to keep going, and you get some cool perks while you're at it. So if you're interested, patreon.com/scpcafe. Until next week, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.